It wasn't the words that hit me first. It was the sound of her chewing gum, slow, wet, rhythmic, like a metronome ticking in the background of something I wasn't supposed to hear. The call had connected automatically to the car's Bluetooth. I was in the garage, the engine still warm from her drive, the vents humming out the last of her perfume. I had just sat down to grab my headphones when her phone, still synced, picked up the incoming call. I don't even remember tapping answer. I think the car did it for me. At first, I thought she was talking to herself. You know how some people mutter while driving? Only this wasn't muttering. "You always say that," she said with a smirk in her voice. "And then you call me 3 hours later like you're starving for it." There was silence from the other end, a long, confident silence. Then a low chuckle. "Yeah, maybe I am." That was not a voice I recognized. It was heavier, thicker, like it belonged to someone who never had to explain himself. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just sat there in the parked car, her phone in the cup holder, still chewing out the static of a conversation I was never meant to hear. "He's clueless," she said. "He thinks I'm stressed from work." "He's not wrong," the man replied. "You do sound tense." She laughed, a real laugh, not the quiet, tired one she gives me after dinner, not the forced one when I make a dumb joke about the neighbor's cat. This one was bright, fast, electric. "Maybe I need some of your therapy again," she said. Then I heard something that made my hands go completely still, the sound of her voice going breathy, like she had leaned in closer to whisper something, but forgot there was a mic open. I couldn't make out what she said, but he could. "Say that again." "No," she whispered. "Say it." Then, the words that cracked my chest like a frozen windshield. "I wish I'd met you first. I must have moved. I must have made a noise." Because suddenly, the call dropped, disconnected. The screen on her dashboard blinked blue, then black. I sat in the car for a full minute before realizing I hadn't exhaled. My fingers were shaking. I didn't even know where my own phone was. All I knew, with full clarity, was that I had just heard something irreversible, something true. That's the moment I stopped living in denial. That's the moment I stopped believing that love was something you could earn by being good, or patient, or loyal. That was the moment I realized she had already left me. She just forgot to take her voice with her. I didn't go back into the house right away. I stayed in the car for what felt like hours, though it was probably 15 minutes, tops. Everything was quiet except the hum of the garage light and the faint pop of the engine cooling down. You'd think my first instinct would be rage, that I'd grab something, slam a door, scream, anything. But no, that's not how it happened. What I felt was shame. Not for what she did, but for how blind I'd been to it. When I finally stepped inside, the house didn't look different, but I saw it differently. The wine glasses on the drying rack, only 2 used in the past month. The scented candle burning low on the living room table that I never lit. The second charger plugged into the wall beside the bed, even though she always claimed she left hers at work. I started noticing things like that. Little things. A trail I'd been too polite to follow before. But now I was doing inventory. I didn't sleep that night. She texted around 10:48 p.m. saying, "Staying at Chloe's, got wine. Love you, heart." I stared at it. Not even a shred of irony. No hint that she knew what I had heard. Or maybe she was betting I hadn't stayed on the line long enough. Maybe she thought I'd assume it was background noise, or an accidental call, or a weird inside joke. But now that I'd heard, I couldn't unhear. Instead of replying, I opened my laptop. The password manager remembered all her logins. I'd set it up for her years ago after she locked herself out of her own Gmail 3 times in a week. I knew her passwords better than she did. And I told myself at first that I was only looking to confirm, just enough to be sure I hadn't misinterpreted what I'd heard. But curiosity is never just curiosity. It's a gateway drug. Her email inbox was mostly receipts, newsletters, and an old Amazon cart with yoga mats and hair masks. Boring. But buried in her archives was something else. A reset confirmation from a messaging app called Morrow. I'd never heard of it. But the icon looked sleek, discreet, designed for people who didn't want their conversations to look like conversations. I downloaded it to my own phone, typed in her number. No dice. Needed a PIN. I knew she reused a few combinations. Birthdays, anniversaries. None of them worked. Then it hit me. The code to her phone's lock screen wasn't my birthday, or hers. It was the street number of the motel we stayed at during our 4th anniversary road trip. I don't know why I remembered that, but it worked. When I tried the same digits on the Morrow login, success. And there they were. The messages. Pages and pages of them. Some short, some graphic, some dangerously mundane. That's what gutted me the most. How normal it all was. Grocery jokes, complaints about coworkers, updates about the dog, except she wasn't sending them to me. Cole. His name was Cole. I kept scrolling. My thumb moved on autopilot while my stomach turned with every word. I expected anger. I expected betrayal. What I didn't expect was the intimacy, the detail, the little things she never told me, her dreams, her insecurities, even her dumb thoughts while brushing her teeth. She had handed those to him like they were pieces of her soul, pieces she used to give me. And then I saw a message that made everything freeze. He doesn't see me. Not really. He thinks I'm still the woman he married, and maybe that's the problem. I'm not her anymore. That one sentence gutted me deeper than anything physical could. Not because it was cruel, but because it might have been true. And I didn't even recognize the moment she stopped being her. Or maybe I had, and ignored it. Maybe I had been pretending too. But I wasn't pretending anymore, because now I knew. And tomorrow she'd come home, smile like nothing happened, maybe kiss my forehead, maybe ask if I wanted Thai or pizza, and I'd be ready. She walked through the front door the next morning like a woman returning from yoga, not betrayal. Hoodie half zipped, hair up in a lazy twist, cheeks glowing from either wine or guilt. The dog barked twice, ran up to greet her. She dropped her gym bag on the tile and gave me the kind of smile that belongs in toothpaste commercials. Clean, bright, practiced. "Hey, sleepyhead," she said, setting a brown paper coffee bag on the counter. "I brought you your weird latte. They were out of oat milk, so I got almond. Hope that's okay." I nodded. I said thank you. I took the cup. I didn't mention that I hadn't slept, hadn't blinked much, hadn't moved more than a few feet from the chair in our office since last night. I'd gone full ghost mode, present, quiet, invisible in the way only the deeply betrayed can be. She kissed my cheek. I let her. The first lie of the day was already rolling by. I waited to see how many more she'd casually toss onto the pile. She made breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, a little bowl of sliced fruit like nothing was wrong. Like the air in the kitchen wasn't humming with secrets. She talked about her late night with Chloe, how they ended up watching that trashy show about rich cult people, and split a bottle of red. I let her speak. I watched her eyes the way I used to watch film scenes in college, carefully, like each movement held hidden symbolism. I paid attention to pauses, to hand gestures, to how often she blinked. I wasn't looking at my wife anymore. I was looking at a crime scene. Every sentence she delivered was scrubbed, polished, perfectly constructed. It didn't sound real. It sounded rehearsed. Like maybe she'd spent the drive home practicing it over and over again, until her voice wrapped around the words without cracking. She didn't mention Cole, not once. But she did say something that gave me pause. "He said the funniest thing about his dog," she began, and then stopped herself. "Chloe's neighbor, the guy who lives next door to her, I think I told you about him. Number?" She hadn't, and there it was, a sudden hiccup in her monologue. A missed step in the dance. She backtracked, redirected, and resumed like nothing happened. But I heard it. And now that I knew who he was, I remembered something else. Chloe didn't live in a neighborhood. She lived in a downtown apartment, a one-bedroom, 6th floor, no dogs allowed. I took a sip of the latte. It tasted like ash. That whole day I didn't let on. I laughed when she laughed. I nodded when she told me about her boss being a passive-aggressive control freak. I asked if she wanted to re-watch something on Netflix that night, her favorite comfort show. She said yes. She curled up next to me on the couch, tucked her toes under my thigh like she always did, and didn't suspect a thing. But I wasn't watching TV. I was watching her. I noticed every glance at her phone, every time she put it face down, every long blink after a notification she didn't answer. She wasn't texting him, not in front of me. She was too smart for that. But I could see the silence around his name. I could feel the space he took up in her thoughts. And I realized something I didn't expect to feel. Calm. Because now I had power. I knew. She didn't know I knew. And the distance between those two truths was the quietest, most dangerous place I'd ever lived. I didn't confront her that night, or the next. Instead, I started logging her behavior, keeping notes, making copies. Her text backups, her calendar entries, even GPS history. I didn't want revenge. Not yet. What I wanted was the whole truth, complete and impossible to deny. Something that couldn't be twisted into a phase or mistake, or it just happened. I wanted the truth on paper, and I was going to collect every piece of it. The problem with knowing something before you're supposed to is that you can't unknow it, and that knowledge festers. It multiplies in your brain like mold in the dark. Every word she spoke became suspect. Every smile turned into performance art. I couldn't see Mara as my wife anymore, only as a suspect auditioning for the role of an innocent woman. I told myself I needed more than suspicion, more than messages and Bluetooth mistakes. I needed her to lie to my face, in real time, after I handed her the bait myself. So I set the trap. Nothing theatrical, just subtle. The kind of bait someone only walks into when they think they're in control of the room. I waited until Friday. She was sitting at the kitchen island, tapping through her phone, one foot lazily swinging under the stool. I came in holding 2 mugs of coffee, hers with cinnamon like she liked, mine plain. She smiled, gave me the same lazy, "thanks, babe," that used to feel comforting, but now it sounded rehearsed. I sipped, waited. Then I said it casually, like I was just remembering something minor. "Hey, random question. Do you remember Ian? That guy who used to work with your friend Chloe?" She looked up, a flicker of confusion in her eyes. That half-second pause before she answered was gold. "Ian?" she asked. "Oh, vaguely. Why?" That pause was everything. There was no Ian. I made him up. Just a name, an empty shell of a person. I leaned forward slightly, testing. "I ran into a guy at the hardware store who said he saw you two getting coffee last week. Said you looked really happy. Thought I should be jealous." I said it with a smirk, like I was joking. Like it was something playful, not strategic. Her face didn't register panic, but something shifted. Her shoulders tightened. Her voice dropped half a tone. Weird. "I don't even know who that would have been," she said, brushing hair behind her ear. "I haven't seen anyone lately besides Chloe." Boom. There it was. No mention of Cole. No hesitation to lie. Just a smooth, clean pivot. She didn't just step into the trap. She built furniture in it, decorated it, lit a candle. I smiled. "Yeah, probably mistaken identity. He said he might have gotten the days mixed up." She shrugged. "Small town. People think they know everything." And then she went right back to scrolling, just like that. But I was already writing the date and time in my notes app the moment I turned around. Lie confirmed. Tone measured. Body language. Self-corrected. Trained. That night, while she slept, peacefully beside me, our legs tangled the way they always had, I did something I never imagined I'd do. I went through her backup cloud drive. Not the usual photo gallery or text logs. This time, I went deeper. App caches, location metadata, even microphone pings tied to voice memos she'd never deleted. And I found something strange. There was an audio clip, unlabeled, tucked inside a folder from nearly 4 months ago. Not an accident, not a voice memo. It started with static, like it had been recorded through a jacket pocket. Then a man's voice, low, measured, confident, saying something I'll never forget. "He seems too dull to notice. You sure you don't want to just end it clean?" Then Mara's voice, calm, like this was a grocery list discussion. Number, not yet. "He's not suspicious. He just thinks I'm sad." The file ended there. I listened to it 3 times. 4. I sat on the floor of our home office with headphones in, while she slept 15 feet away from me. I stared at the waveform on the screen, numb, wondering what kind of version of me she was describing. The one she called dull, clueless, disposable. I wasn't angry. Not yet. It was something colder, a kind of quiet mourning you only feel when you realize the person you've built a life with has built another one without you. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part came the next morning in the form of a message, not from her. Not from Cole. It was from an anonymous number, no name, just 1 sentence. "You don't know everything. Stop pretending you do." I froze. Read it again. Nothing else came. No context, no follow-up. I didn't reply. Because now the game wasn't just between me and her. Someone else was watching. I didn't sleep after that text. I sat up in bed, staring into the glow of my screen, reading the message over and over, like it might suddenly expand into more. You don't know everything. Stop pretending you do. That was it. No signature, no typing bubbles. Just that single sentence dropped like a pebble into a lake I thought was calm, now rippling in every direction. I did what anyone would have done in my situation. I panicked quietly. Not a visible Hollywood kind of panic. I didn't throw anything or shout. I just sat still with 1,000 thoughts sprinting through my head like startled animals. Who knew what I knew? More importantly, who knew that I knew? Mara didn't say anything strange that morning. She left for work like normal, said she'd be home late. Something about a team dinner. I didn't even nod. I just stared at the back of the door after it closed behind her. And then I got to work. I called in sick to my job, mumbled something about food poisoning, which my boss didn't even question. Then I pulled up phone records, started scanning every number from the past 30 days. There were a few unfamiliar ones. Spam, scam. A realtor, probably wrong number. Then one caught my attention. Not because it stood out, but because it didn't. The number that sent the message was local, like truly local, as in 3 blocks from our address. And when I cross-referenced it with a few public search tools, the only name attached to it was a property management database. Nothing useful, no person, but the address it was tied to. Apartment 6, B, Oak Ridge Place. That's where Chloe lived. Or where Mara claimed Chloe lived. I knew the building, but we'd never been inside together. She always said Chloe liked her privacy and had a weird roommate, so I'd never had a reason to go, until now. I drove there around 11:45 a.m., parked across the street, waited for someone to come out so I could slip into the building without buzzing. It took 10 minutes, and then I was inside. Concrete walls, dim yellow lighting. The kind of place that doesn't smell bad, but never quite smells good either. I found 6B at the far end of the second floor, next to a stairwell that reeked faintly of cigarette smoke and air freshener. I knocked, no answer. I knocked again, longer this time. Still nothing, and then I did something I'm not proud of. I pulled a small business card from my wallet and slid it into the doorframe to check the latch. It didn't budge, locked tight. But as I was pulling the card back out, the door across the hall opened. An old man in a stained t-shirt and pajama pants stepped out holding a garbage bag. "You looking for Cole?" he asked, squinting at me. I froze. "What?" He jutted his chin toward the door behind me. "That's Cole's place. You just missed him. He left with that woman. Dark hair, tall, real pretty. Not the same girl he used to bring over, though." I felt the temperature in the hallway drop. "Do you know when he'll be back?" I asked, trying not to sound like my heart was punching through my ribs. "Hard to say," the man shrugged. "Comes and goes, keeps odd hours. You a friend of his?" I smiled, something neutral and dishonest. "Yeah, something like that." He gave me a look, curious, maybe suspicious, and disappeared down the stairs with his garbage bag swinging like a pendulum. I didn't knock again. I just stood there, staring at Cole's door, at the number 6B etched into the frame like some sort of code I wasn't meant to decipher. So, Mara had been coming here. This wasn't Chloe's apartment. This was his place. And someone else in the building knew it. Someone who had my number. Someone who had sent me a message not to dig deeper. I left the building, heart thudding against my spine. Back at home, I sat on the edge of the bathtub, staring at nothing while the dog scratched at the bathroom door. Then, in a daze, I opened my email and found something new. A single message from a Gmail account I didn't recognize. Subject line: "You're not crazy." Inside was just one image, a blurry photo taken through a window. Mara sitting at a table in someone's kitchen, laughing, holding a wine glass, leaning towards someone out of frame. She was wearing the same outfit she had worn to girls' night 3 days ago. Under the photo was a caption: "Ask her what she dropped off at the storage unit." That's when I remembered something. 2 weeks ago, she had told me she was donating old clothes to a charity drop box on her lunch break. I didn't think anything of it at the time, but now I knew what I needed to do next. Because this wasn't just about an affair anymore. There was something else she was hiding, and it was locked away in a storage unit under a name I had never heard before. The number was handwritten on the back of a grocery receipt I found in her coat pocket, not her usual coat. Not the one she wore to work or dinner. This was the dusty navy windbreaker she used for early morning jogs, the same one that somehow always made it back into the closet without me seeing her wear it. The receipt looked unimportant at first. Just juice, a protein bar, a 5-pack of travel toothpaste. But scribbled in the top corner, just above the printed store logo, was this: Storage, 409 East. Unit 117, B, code 3115. No name, no context, just the address and the code. That was the first time it hit me that maybe she hadn't just been cheating. Maybe she was relocating. Not physically, not yet. But slowly, deliberately, piece by piece, into a life that didn't include me. The facility was one of those cheap self-storage places on the edge of town, tucked behind a half-empty strip mall and a shuttered vape shop. The kind of place where broken lives go to sit in cardboard boxes until someone stops paying the bill. The sign out front was missing a few letters, so it just read ST-RAEU-STORGE. Perfect. I didn't go right away. I sat in my car across the street for nearly 30 minutes, rehearsing what I'd say if anyone stopped me. Security. A manager. Her. I kept waiting for the fear to pass, but it never did. It just changed color, from panic to resolve, from dread to curiosity, and finally, into something close to acceptance. She had led me this far, whether she meant to or not. Now, I needed to see how deep the tunnel went. The keypad at the gate didn't question anything. I punched in the code, 3115, and the little green light blinked like it approved of my betrayal. I walked past rows of metal doors, each one identical, lifeless, until I reached 117B. The lock was basic, combination. The kind they sell at gas stations. It clicked open like it had been waiting for me. The unit was small, 10 by 10 maybe, and smelled like rust, old air, and something faintly floral. At first glance, it didn't look like much. A few stacked boxes, a folded camping chair, a storage tub labeled Books His. And then, in the back, covered in a thin gray blanket, was a tall, rectangular object I instantly recognized but couldn't believe I was seeing. Our wedding photo. Framed, protected, hidden. It wasn't hanging in our home anymore. We had taken it down a few months ago during renovations, and she'd said it had gotten chipped in the corner and wasn't worth rehanging, but here it was, untouched, clean, tucked away like a relic from a war she had already declared. I knelt beside it, unwrapped it fully, and stared into our frozen smiles. The photo had once sat on our mantel. I remember when we took it, a windy afternoon, her hair whipping against my face, my tie crooked, her makeup slightly smudged from crying during the vows. We had loved that moment, or I had at least. She had taken that memory and sealed it in a concrete cell without telling me. Beside it was a folder, unlabeled. I opened it without thinking. Inside were printed emails, bank transfers, and an application for a rental condo in Chicago, signed under a name I didn't recognize, Mara Jensen. That wasn't her maiden name. That wasn't any name connected to her legal identity. It was a fabrication. I flipped through more pages. Most of it looked like planning. Budget sheets, timelines, travel confirmations under burner emails. And there, stapled to the back of the stack, a list titled Things to Move Before September. It wasn't long. Some clothing, her dog-eared copy of The Bell Jar, a jewelry box I'd never seen before, a knife set from our wedding registry, the one she swore had gone missing during the last move. But at the very bottom, scrawled in different handwriting, was one line that made me feel like the floor dropped out. Letter. Leave for him or not? It wasn't checked. No, yes. No, no. Just the question. I stood there in the dim light, the air growing heavier, the temperature colder than it had any right to be, and realized something that hollowed me out more than her affair ever did. She wasn't just lying. She had already made the decision to disappear. I put everything back exactly where I found it, closed the folder, rewrapped the photo. I didn't steal anything. I didn't take pictures. I didn't want proof anymore. I had enough of that. I wanted the confrontation, and more than that, I wanted to hear what she'd say when I gave her a choice. Stay and explain everything, or leave and never come back. But fate, as it turns out, had something else in mind. Because when I got home that night, the door was already cracked open, and someone had been inside. The front door wasn't wide open. It wasn't kicked in or hanging off the hinge. It was just ajar, 4 or 5 inches. Quiet, subtle, like someone wanted me to believe I forgot to close it, to second-guess my memory, not my safety. That was the most unsettling part. It wasn't loud, it was careful. I stood on the porch for a full minute, not moving, listening, not for noise inside the house. It was silent, but for something else, something I couldn't quite define. I didn't feel alone, but I didn't feel watched either. I felt arranged, like someone had put something in place and was waiting for me to notice. I stepped in, slowly. The first thing I saw was the light in the hallway. On. We never leave that light on during the day. It casts long shadows across the floor, and Mara always said it made her feel like the house was haunted. But today, it was glowing, bare, intentional. I walked further in, my shoes making soft creaks against the hardwood. Everything looked normal at first glance. Keys in the bowl, coat rack untouched, the dog asleep in its bed. But as I turned toward the kitchen, I saw it. Something was gone. The picture frame that used to sit above the dining table, the one of us on our honeymoon in New Orleans, sweaty and drunk and deliriously in love, had been removed. Not knocked off, not shattered. Removed. The nails were still in the wall. The dust outline still framed where it once hung. I stood under the empty space, staring at it like I expected the photo to reappear if I just focused hard enough. It didn't. Then I saw something else. Something that shouldn't have been there. On the table sat a small black flash drive, unmarked, ordinary, except for the post-it note underneath it, held in place by a single fork. The note wasn't signed. No name. Just 4 words, scribbled in slanted handwriting I didn't recognize. Play this. Alone. Now. My hands were shaking when I picked it up. Not out of fear, not exactly, but something close. The kind of trembling that comes when you feel like you're about to be let in on a truth so big it might change the shape of your memory. A shift in perspective you can't unlearn. I didn't wait. I went straight to the office, closed the door, inserted the drive into the desktop tower, and waited. There was only one file, a video, 37 minutes long. I clicked play. It opened with security footage, grainy, black and white, time-stamped from nearly 2 weeks ago. It showed a storage unit hallway. My wife, Mara, walked into frame. She looked calm, focused. She was carrying a box. She unlocked the door, opened it, stepped inside. Then, another figure entered the frame. Not Cole, someone older, thinner, wearing a ball cap and a hoodie. I couldn't see the face clearly, but I knew, somehow, instantly, this was the man who'd been sending me the messages, the one who lived across from 6B, or at least, the one who knew what was in there. They didn't talk. He handed her something, a thick envelope. She nodded, said something I couldn't hear. The camera angle never gave me a clear look at his face. Then, the footage cut. The next scene was a recording from a phone. The camera was pointed at the passenger seat of a car. Mara sat there, visibly upset, not crying, but close. She was mid-conversation. Whoever was filming didn't say anything. They just listened. She spoke in rushed, shaky breaths. "I don't know how to do it," she said. "He's not stupid. He's starting to feel it." Silence from the driver. Then she added, "I thought it'd be clean. I thought I could slide out and let him hate me, and then I could just leave. But now it feels wrong, like I'm not just cheating. I'm erasing him." Her voice cracked on the last word. Another cut. This time, audio only. A phone recording, hidden in a pocket maybe. She was talking again, whispering. "There's more than he knows. And if he finds the rest, if he sees what I've actually done, he'll never come back from it." The file ended there. I sat back in the chair, numb, mouth dry, mind racing. The betrayal I thought I understood was only the outer shell. There was something deeper, something buried, something she feared I'd uncover. And now I had a new question spinning in my head, louder than all the others. Who gave me that flash drive? Because it wasn't her. And if it wasn't Cole, then someone else was inside this house. someone who wanted me to find it. And the game they were playing wasn't just about Mara anymore. It was about me. I didn't call her. I didn't text. I waited. I sat in the living room in silence, flash drive back in my pocket, empty coffee mug in my hand. The air felt heavier than usual, but also quieter. Not the kind of silence that suffocates, but the kind that holds its breath. Like the moment before a storm breaks, or the instant after someone finally tells you the truth. She came home around 6:30 p.m., keys jingling in the door, grocery bags hanging from her arms. She was humming. That broke me a little, not because it was happy, but because it was normal, still pretending we were in the same script, still acting like nothing was bleeding under the surface. I didn't speak until she set the bags down. "We need to talk," I said. She froze, not dramatically, just for a beat. Then she looked at me and nodded slowly, like she'd been expecting this moment. Just not tonight. I told her everything. The speakerphone call, the storage unit, the man in 6B, the flash drive. I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I just laid it out like a map of everything I'd discovered. Her face stayed still, her hands wrapped tightly around the edge of the counter, her knuckles white. And then she did something I didn't expect. She said, "I'm sorry," and actually meant it. Not just the words, the way she said them, not defensive, not performative, not trying to spin it into some mutual failing. Just honest, raw, human. "I didn't know how to leave you," she said, "but I didn't want to lie anymore either, and I didn't want to lose who I used to be. Not to you, not to him, to me. I got lost after the last failed IVF. Everything felt broken, and I didn't know how to fix it. So I ran. I didn't run away from you. I ran away from everything." She started crying. Not dramatically, not for effect. She cried like someone who was tired of pretending not to be tired. I listened. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like a ghost in my own life. "I never planned to leave without telling you," she continued. "But I kept waiting for the right moment, and the longer I waited, the more cowardly I felt. Cole wasn't what you think. We were close. He was a distraction. But it wasn't love. It wasn't real, and I ended it, weeks ago." She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "I wrote you a letter, the one I didn't know whether to leave or not. I couldn't bring myself to finish it." I opened it. Inside were only 2 sentences. "You didn't deserve this, but you also don't deserve to carry me forever." I don't know what changed in me in that moment. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the fact that I finally understood that her betrayal hadn't been about finding someone better. It was about her losing sight of herself and not knowing how to ask me for help. We sat in silence for almost an hour. Then we talked. For once, really talked. About everything. About how we got here, what we ignored, what we hid, what we feared. We talked until the dog fell asleep at our feet and the sun dipped behind the blinds. No promises were made that night. No sudden decisions. But something unexpected began growing in the cracks between us. Not romance, not yet, but a kind of fragile mutual respect. A thread we could both tug on if we wanted to try rebuilding. Weeks passed. The flash drive. We never found out who left it, but Mara believes it was her old therapist. Someone she had cut off when she started unraveling and didn't want to be held accountable. I reached out to the number once. It was disconnected. Maybe that's how it was meant to end. Not with more questions, but with enough answers to move forward. We didn't burn it all down. We didn't run. We did the harder thing. We stayed. We started therapy together. Not to erase the past, but to understand it. And more importantly, not repeat it. And slowly, day by day, I started seeing pieces of her return. Not the version of her I wanted, but the one who was brave enough to finally tell the truth. And me? I stopped waiting for the version of my life that didn't exist anymore. I stopped holding on to the idea that I could fix it all by catching the lie or exposing the secret. The truth was never going to be perfect, but it could be honest. And sometimes, that's the only way forward. Not through the door you thought she'd close, but through the one neither of you had the courage to open. Until now.